we certainly weren't expecting this. There was no strong rumors in the last couple of days, last couple of hours even. It just landed out of the blue, and is a very, I suppose, shocking update for the whole of Irish rugby. I don't think anyone really saw this coming, even with the poor form that Munster were in. It's obviously early in a new season. Rowntree was contracted to 2026, and they would have hoped that, you know, this break from the URC would have got fresh bodies back and maybe kick things on. But no, he's left. Their announcement says it's by mutual agreement between himself, Munster, and the RFU. There's even a quote from Rowntree there in the official statement, which is obviously a little bit unusual in these circumstances. But yeah, it's been a tumultuous time for Munster over the last, 18 months, really. I guess they won a URC in Rowntree's first season in charge. It was a remarkable story that we all enjoyed and I suppose celebrated at the time. It was brilliant. It was massive for Irish rugby that Munster were back winning a trophy, but it's been less happy since. It's been very up and down, and yeah, it is a big shock that it's happened like this. But even now, with a few minutes time to think about it, it's kind of settling in that, you know, all wasn't perfect there, and now there's been a pretty decisive move, I guess, from all parties.
Rich, as Mer says, this is officially one where it's happened by mutual consent. Do you have any sense of whether this was a situation in which the head coach decided to walk, or whether he was pushed ultimately after a poor start of this season?
No, I have no sense. I would guess he probably walked. He's a very proud, very honourable guy, and I actually was ironic. I was watching the match in South Africa on the sideline of Viva before the Leinster game, and obviously the game from quite early, it was clear was going against the Sharks, and I just said to a few people, I hope Graham doesn't like take too much on post match. You know, I hope he's not too honest. I hope he can just, you know, say, look, at the break's coming at a great time, we'll regroup in a couple of weeks, because I feel sometimes he's nearly too honest for his own good in press conferences, and the weight of and burden of expectation and the craving for success for Munster weighs heavy on him. And you know, this has been another difficult start to the season. There's obviously been injuries. He lost his two best players over the summer, and he maybe just feels, looking after 5 years, you know, that energy isn't there, or that way forward, or the group are better off with a change of voice. And if, like, he's not a mercenary coach, he's, you know, I could see him. I would always be skeptical, but about coaches mutually agreeing. But in this case, I actually could easily see it. It must be very difficult for him. Probably got success before, quicker than he probably hoped, and then obviously last year they finished top of the table, but they weren't really convincing. You know, it wasn't. And if that sounds a bit stupid, but they, you know, I didn't, even though they finished top, you still didn't say they were in a great fettle. And then obviously losing that home game to Glasgow, and then a difficult start to the season. Yeah, I could see it being his decision, to be fair, without knowing any facts. But for Munster now, obviously Ian Costello is going to step in the interim. But realistically, I think I actually don't think they're that badly coached, to be honest. I think they're well coached. It's just whether a new voice can actually get more out of them than they're getting at the moment.
I guess, Birch, if it was Rowntree's decision on a rugby basis alone, it's probably, I mean, it would be hurtful to a lot of the group, because it would indicate that maybe he just didn't feel they could turn it around this time, the way that they have turned it around in the previous two seasons. Like, kind of, to some degree, just saying, I don't think I have the raw materials here to actually make a success of this anymore.
Yeah, no, I don't look at it. I don't think the players won't take it like that. I think if he did walk, it's to give someone else a chance to try and get more out of them. I think he's deeply frustrated. Like, the reality is, unfortunately, that Zebra game meant they had to go to the well against the Ospreys. They did. In fairness, got an unbelievable reaction, but then they faced into Leinster in Croke Park. And while they were really brave in that game, you know, I think there was an obvious gulf in class. And like, to make that up, like, Graham Rowntree will want Munster to be competing with the best teams in Europe under his tenure. And then like the Stormers result was a shocking result because Stormers are bang average at the moment, as we saw at the weekend. Sharks is a little bit different because the Sharks actually now have the team on paper where they can potentially go toe to toe with the best in Europe. So, I wouldn't see it as being an insult to the players. I think it's actually testament to him. If this is what happened, is that he just felt, look, for the province's sake, this is the time to go. There's a gap. There's an opportunity. There's a holiday now. There's 10 days. Most teams are off for 10 days. Some teams off for 2 weeks. Come back with a new plan, a new voice, and try and save the season. And that wouldn't surprise me if he did that. It would surprise me with most coaches. But what I've got to know of him over the last couple of years, he's always tried to do what's right for Munster, and I think this could be an example of that.
Just got a message from Owen Toolan saying Ten Hag and Rowntree gone in 24 hours. His mind is blown based on his emoji choice. There are some parallels there, aren't there?
Well, I've always thought there's parallels between Man United and Munster, to be honest, and not just the red jerseys, just I suppose the giants they've been and the expectations around them and the pressure that comes with the job, and that is relevant here. Like, let's be realistic here. A mutual agreement exit, it's rarely just about the coach walking away, is it? All parties agree that this is the time to finish it, even though it's just at the start of the season. The first block, there's so much ahead, and it's an indicator of how, I suppose, troubling a start to the season it has been, because even we were going to do our review Munster, I didn't really know where to land, because first the line out was an issue, but then their attack is throwing intercepts, they're making sloppy errors. I thought they looked really lethargic from the very kickoff of last weekend against the Sharks. And I know it's at the end of a block and you've travelled to South Africa and everything, but there was just a lack of energy there. And I suppose the challenge for Rowntree was always going to be that this was his first head coach job after a pretty long coaching career. He'd never actually stepped up as a head coach before, and that was the doubt that was there when Munster eventually gave him the job, having looked at various other candidates, and maybe it was even a doubt in his own mind about taking on all that pressure and stress, which it has been, and which apparently has been the biggest challenge for Rowntree, is managing all those people all the time, all the personalities, being on top of everything. It's not just about rugby. It's not just about the scrum and the line out or those specific areas that you had before. You've got that and everything else with it. And maybe that was the challenge for him. Certainly, as Birch says there, it was a burden on him, and you could see that. And he always came across has always come across as such a thoroughly decent, sound fella. And that's his reputation in the game, but you could see it weighing on him. And I suppose how you manage that around a group of players who often are highly stressed themselves, that's the big challenge for anyone being the kind of figurehead. And from all we hear from behind the scenes over the last year or so, that hasn't been a smooth process all the time. We know that Peter O'Mahony, I mean, I know he kind of denied it or said they didn't have a big fallout, but that's the strong word, that the pair of them didn't see eye to eye around that contract negotiation time. O'Mahony handed in the captaincy out of the blue. It doesn't take, rocket science to really figure that out. And there was various other mutterings. I think you mentioned it, Birch, and you got the head eaten off you by some Munster fans about an unhappiness last season. And that was the word coming out of the camp. And it seemed that had settled a little bit coming into this season, and they'd refreshed over the summer and they were going again, and there was a bit of a positive pep in their step, but that very quickly dissipated, I have to say, over the last 6 weeks, really. The evidence was there on the pitch, and again, it seemed like that stress and pressure of being head coach was back on Rowntree. So yeah, it's happened all of a sudden in the end, but I suppose there has been a kind of process to get to this point. Winning the URC in his first season in charge was a brilliant achievement. It was a very up and down season up until that point. It was the most strange trophy win, really, if you think about it. Glasgow going down to Thomond Park only a couple of months before they won the trophy, going across and winning really well, and you thought this has been a bit of a disaster of a season, and then they got that really good run and deservedly won the trophy in the end. But it hasn't ever been a smooth sailing thing, and I'm sure that Rowntree deservedly and justifiably would point to flaws in what he had to work with it, and a squad that maybe didn't change as maybe didn't get as much, I suppose, kind of big name input from signings as he went along, and maybe he felt like that wasn't ideal for him, and there's all sorts of other challenges there as well. But yeah, it hasn't been the smoothest couple of years, even with a trophy thrown in there, and now they've got to go again.